Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the 19th meeting of the Corporate Services Committee. I'll start by reading a statement. The City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternative formats and communication supports for council, standing, or advisory committee meetings and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. Colleagues, we have an added agenda today, which has a couple of additional in-camera items, which you'll have a copy of an additional confidential report on your desk. We have a disclosure of pecuniary interest first. Does anybody have any? Okay, seeing none, we have two consent items, 2.1 and 2.2. Does anybody want to deal with them separately, or would you like to move them together? So let me ask, does anybody want them separated? No, I'd look for a mover of both 2.1 and 2.2 together. Councillor Kaibaga, Councillor Hillier. Discussion or comments on these? Deputy Mayor Helmer.
Well, I think the report on the credit rating sort of speaks for itself, but I didn't want to let it go without commenting. It's obviously good news. In that report, there are a couple of concerns that are flagged by Moody's. They're not new to us here on the committee, and I wonder if our staff wanted to address any of these things that have been raised, you know, especially the provincial downloading as a pressure on our credit rating and the overall financial health of the municipality. I know Moody's said we're very well positioned to withstand it, but it is an issue.
Thank you. Through the chair. So through some of the discussions, they recognize that that is definitely a challenge across Ontario with some of the changes that have been made. But certainly in the document that they had put forward shortly after the announcements were made, they actually did reference London as being one of the most well-positioned. So I think their comments are reflective of, they know there are pressures. However, they also are very positive in the fact that we are well equipped to weather that and have some options with all of the prudent financial management strategies that we've had that will allow us likely to weather the storm with a little bit of less impact than likely some other municipalities might experience. So I think it's more a flag that they have to note that that's a pressure and certainly a concern. But I think definitely through the multi-year budget, they will be monitoring that closely in terms of what the options are that we put forward. And certainly our very first principle will be to stick to our financial strategy and long-term financial plan and all of the key principles that are currently council approved. We will not be looking to deviate from those core principles, and it may possibly result in some more challenging discussions in terms of limited tax dollars to pay for all of it, but I think it's trying to find the right balance and using all of the tools that we have at our disposal to find the most prudent way forward, and that's certainly what we will be presenting through the multi-year budget that we bring forward later this year.
Mayor Holder.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think this is an important shout out to the city with respect to London's credit rating. I was at a meeting, effectively a debriefing meeting, Chair, with our treasurer and other representatives. And when Moody's formally announced that it was for the 43rd year, we enjoy AAA credit rating. That's absolutely extraordinary. I think that speaks to the current bench strength of our finance department. And if I might give a shout out to prior treasurers and others who have taken great leadership roles with support of council. This is unprecedented, and I just want to say it matters at every level in terms of our ability to work as a community, costs associated with this type of credit rating, and I think it deserves any and all the accolades that we give our city staff for its handling of our finances.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a few comments myself. The credit rating's pretty important, and this report is pretty important for a couple of reasons. One is I appreciate that it not only identifies some of the risks and but also some of the rationale for the positive credit rating. And two that I have been a consistent item in the last number of years have been both the application of our multi-year budget, the fact that we have a multi-year budget and plan on a larger time horizon, create stable corridors of funding, and then the whole annual update process is seen as a strong governance and management practice. And then two, the fact that they do point specifically to the management and governance of the corporation as a reason for it. And so that's a testament to both our staff as well as successive councils over the years who have stuck to a consistent, rational, stable fiscal plan and made some pretty, tough decisions at times on being very restrained with spending, as well as having all the policies in place that are in the fiscal management grouping, whether it's our investment policies, our debt issuance policies, even the ways that we deal with surpluses, all contribute to that, and that is a credit to successive councils on maintaining that that particular outlook. I would echo what the mayor definitely said about that this is certainly something for 43 years in a row that is not very common. What it does is it gives us a very strong advantage when other reports come through this committee on debt issuance. And when we talk about the rates that we tend to get and how competitive we are with the rates, the fact that our debt issuances are well subscribed to at rates that we pay out, which tend to be very good for us, maybe not so as great for the investor. But that is because we have a very stable credit rating. We are a great place to invest in debt issuances, and we take our debt very seriously. So this report and this credit rating does translate into savings for Londoners in the amount of interest that we pay on our debt directly. And I just wanted that to be pointed out as well, and I appreciate the comments from all of our other colleagues. So great work by our staff to continue along with our fiscal plan. And I'm sure we'll have the work ahead to manage some challenges that are beyond our control, but that I think, as Moody's has said, after the provincial budget was released, London is certainly well positioned to try to, deal with strategies to absorb those. So unless there are any further comments, which I see none, we can open the two consent items for voting.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.
We have no scheduled items, and the next item on our agenda is an item for direction. It is the council policy on the mayor's New Year's honors list. This is to make some adjustments to the policy. Before you, you have both the report as well as the bylaw that would go to council. I'd look for a mover and a seconder for. Oh, we need to provide direction on this. Okay, so colleagues have the report in front of them and the options available to us. So we can open it for discussion, debate, and then a committee direction. Mayor Holder.
Since this is the mayor's New Year's honors policy, perhaps I might just make a comment to it. You'll recall that one of the things that we had recommended doing was proceeding with 4 additional honorees in addition to the 10 in the very formal categories. And the thing I would point out to colleagues is that the categories that we're suggesting, and details are in Appendix A here, make reference to 4 individuals to be selected, but that we're asking each council member may submit up to 1 name for consideration. But the category that we determined that all 4 would come under would be distinguished Londoner. Because you'll note that in the current mayor's honors list, which is, while ultimately approved by council, is chosen by various groups in a number of categories, not exclusive. They can be nominated for anyone, but are in categories very specific to that indicated in terms of the current policy statement And those 10 categories are everywhere from accessibility to sports, and there are a number in between. So with that, these are the 4 additional ones that was supported previously. So we're looking to take this forward because we have some dates to respond to, and we want to be in a position to advise all of council that they're welcome, they're not required, but that they're welcome to put a name forward as they see appropriate under the category, under the Mayor's New Year's Honors List as Distinguished Londoner.
And to help the committee along, since this is a report looking for a council direction, the 2 possible directions that I see we could take on this is to receive the report, which would make absolutely no change to the way that we do this, or we have some language prepared that would basically approve or bring forward the appended bylaw to council for approval, which would add that new category of Distinguished Londoner as the mayor had outlined. So I assume the mayor would like to move that, and I would.
Well, I was thinking of moving that, but I'm not sure if that's a conflict. I don't think that it is, but if it is not, I'd be delighted to move.
Moved by the mayor, seconded by Deputy Mayor Helmer. Any other discussion? Deputy Mayor Helmer.
I think it's a reasonable change. I think it's a limited number of people, which I think is important. I think we want to be recognizing people in the community. There's lots of great work going on, but I'm glad it's not a huge expansion. I think it's important to keep it limited to people who are doing amazing things in the community. I think that's still happening with this kind of change. So I think I'll support what the mayor has suggested. We can see how it goes. We can make more changes in the future if those are necessary.
So if you click your current item, you should be able to see the language up on the screen now, and it's moved and seconded. If everybody's, we'll just make sure all colleagues can see the wording of the motion before I call the vote. For those at home, the way it reads is that the proposed bylaw as appended to the staff report dated October 8th, 2019 be introduced at municipal council meeting held on October 15th, 2019 to amend the Mayor's New Year's Honor List policy to provide for a new category of Distinguished Londoner to be selected by the mayor, as is outlined in the bylaw there. Mayor Holder.
Chair, my only question would be that looking at the motion, is that sufficiently clear that in this case that we are selecting up to 4 individuals in that category? That's, if that covers it, then I'm quite fine with it. Noting that the other categories are limited to 1 individual per that exist already.
Yep, because it refers to the actual bylaw, and that's what will be passed, the bylaw articulates those details quite clearly. So it's fine the way it is. Everybody good with reading it? Perfect. Okay, I'll open that for voting then.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.
Okay, that moves us to deferred matters and additional business. If any colleagues have additional business, now would be the time. Councillor Kaibaga.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'd like to add that we review our proclamation policy. I know that the current one that we have stems from during the time where the city was fined. Well, this specific policy was put in place, and then the city was fined after this policy was put in place. So I would like to see if we can amend it. Under 4.1, it says that no proclamation shall be issued on behalf of the City of London except those required by law to be issued. I'd like to amend that to add that we do recognize national recognized proclamations. And I'm also happy to share my research on different cities that have been doing proclamations and how we can work on that.
So I heard you wanted to amend it, but I also heard that you wanted to have it looked into. So is the direction that you're asking for us to take a look at the proclamation policy, or you're looking to try to amend it at the meeting here?
I think we can take a look at it. I know that currently HR is working on a report, and I think through your chair, Mr. Bill Coxhead could also let me know. Like, I know there's a report that's coming to corporate soon, which will also address this specific point. I wonder if there'll be some room to like have this discussion. We can work on it together.
My apologies, I actually missed what the question was, if it was for me, because I was just asking the clerk to put together some language for you.
That's okay. I was talking about a report that's coming to corporate soon through HR, and just wondering if he could comment on when we'd be receiving that report. I think it was directed back in April, or sorry, not April. Yeah, April or March, can't remember, but there's a report coming, and in that report, there'll be room to review this specific policy, and just wondering if we can take that on as well.
Okay, what we're doing currently is I'm having the clerk work on some language about the direction to administration to review the proclamation policy with some of the items that you had mentioned, but I'll have Mr. Coxhead answer the question about a forthcoming report and the timing on that while we're putting that together for you.
Thank you. Through the chair. So, yeah, back in, I believe it was June, we were requested to consider a policy to host an event to recognize London's Black history, and subsequently we were working in that regard. One of the options for council's consideration is to do a proclamation in that regard, and so we're doing some look into what that proclamation is. It's very simple. It's as described by the member. And what would it take to alter that policy or do something in the alternative? So we'll be providing that report either at the next cycle or immediately the following one, but it's soon.
Mayor Holder.
Thank Mr. Coxhead and acknowledge the councillor's direction on this. I'm trying to understand though, is this a case specific, one issue specific, or as I heard from Mr. Coxhead, or is this broader, as I thought I heard from the councillor, with regard to national type groups? That might well be worthy of taking rather than any vote that would come today in terms of making that direction, taking it back for consideration, because that could enter into a host of other things as well. I have no issue with this particular point that Mr. Cox had mentioned with regard to Black History Month, but if it's going to be broader, I think we need to understand the implications of that.
Yes, my understanding and the language as I can see it being worked on is to provide direction to staff to review the proclamation policy specifically on that kind of, to recognize, that wider component of recognitions, for lack of a better term, that the council was referring to, nationally recognized events and dates and that sort of thing. I think Mr. Cox had articulated in his report back on a specific potential recognition, that one of the ways to do that was through the proclamation policy. And so our proclamation policy currently is that we don't really do proclamations, from my recollection of the policy review that we conducted last term. So it seems like these two things work together, in that Mr. Cox said might comment on that, but we would actually need to make some changes to a policy anyways. So I think the direction back to provide staff take a look at that could coincide. I'm not sure that they 100% need to be linked together, because there is a wider scope on the one. So, but I'm not going to put words in the councillor's mouth. We're going to provide some potential language, and then we're going to see if she's okay moving that, and if there's a seconder, and then we can proceed with the direction so that we know exactly what we're doing. So I think we're pretty close to having something up for the councillor's consideration. Okay, Councillor Kaibaga has reviewed the language. We're going to put that up, and she's able to move it so that colleagues can see it, and then I would look for a seconder or any questions that colleagues have of Councillor Kaibaga before we proceed. So if you click your current item, it should refresh now. You should be able to see it on the screen. It says that the civic administration be directed to review the City of London issuance of proclamation policy, which is the name of the policy, specifically in terms of acknowledging nationally recognized proclamations. Questions? Oh, Councillor Hillier is willing to second. Okay, we have a moved and seconded motion, so we'll have discussion and debate on this now. So colleagues who would like to add some comments, now is the time. Okay, if there's no comments, then I can open it for voting. I just want to ensure everybody's ready for that. Yep, I see nodding, so we'll open this item for voting.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.
Okay, any other additional business? Okay, seeing none, we have on the added agenda 4 confidential matters, or in-camera matters. I will look for a motion to move into confidential session. Councillor Kaibaga, Councillor Van Meerbergen seconded. We'll open that vote on the system in a second, and once that vote is concluded, we will move to the committee room. There is no other business on the council agenda after that, so we will adjourn from the committee room after we open the doors and return to public session there.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.